And what I learned from rowing was really the power of teamwork and the X factor of teamwork. I make my living helping business people work together as teams, and what most people overlook is that X factor. You can have the same caliber of people, same horsepower in a team or a boat, but unless you trust and respect each other, unless you can believe you can win and visualize that success, unless you work together to make that happen, it ain't happening.
In a world of talkers, CrisMarie's a doer. Her list of accomplishments speak for themselves. Olympic athlete, two-time national champion, inducted into University of Washington Hall of Fame, Boeing flight test engineer, Masters in Business Administration, hip-hop dancer, actor, co-author of The Beauty of Conflict.
It was a very dynamic hour. It was a great presentation.
I absolutely loved it. I think the best part was when she said to view conflict as a competitive advantage for a team, see conflict as the juice to get to creativity. I thought that was awesome. Just a different perspective on conflict and not see it as a negative, but to embrace it and understand that it can really lead to true outcomes.
It's amazing, and I have a lot of good key takeaways from the session.
Interesting, and did a really great job delivering the whole thing, and I'm going to use it with my team.
I grew up with an Army Colonel dad who was also an alcoholic. He'd been in Vietnam a few times. He was an angry man. So every night at dinner was like running the gauntlet, hoping the Colonel would not explode. And my older sister, for whatever reason, she just seemed to want to tick him off. And I was like, please don't do that. And so I learned to change the subject, ask a question, say, hey, Dad, or rephrase what I was saying so that he would kind of settle down, because I was constantly looking for the cues of, is he getting upset? What's going on? And I learned a lot of skills on how to basically diffuse, manage, avoid conflict, because the Colonel was pretty darn scary to be around. So I became a pleaser, a peacekeeper, and an achiever. Like I was because achieving really settled him down if I could tell him all the great things that I had done. So that was my strategies to survive my childhood. And that actually served me well. It became a superpower of mine. And when I wasn't an athlete in high school, when we were in college, we won national champions. I was the stroke, the leader of the team. And so I then went on to be on the national team. And this is the tale of two boats, I want to tell you, because it's very different teamwork and it's very different of how we dealt with conflict. I was on I made it to the elite team, the US elite team, and we were going to the World Championships. And I was wet behind the ears and thought I was all that because I was stroking these collegiate national championship boats. And so I made the top boat, and what happened is we had a team discussion, because even though I was winning and I'd done well, I'd never been on that world stage, different countries. I'd never raced that. And so I was confronted by my teammates because they said, we don't think you should stroke the boat. And I'm like, what? But we think we have a more senior person here who's been around the block. She's been on the national stage or the world stage. She's more stable, and we think we should have her lead. And so we had this debate. I actually saw, it made sense to me. And so I was in the back of the boat, the bow of the boat, which is the front of the boat, but in rowing, it's the back of the boat. And so then we show up to, and I think it's because we could have that conflict and have that tough conversation that it actually developed more trust on the team between us. And so we went to the World Championships. It was in Copenhagen, Denmark, and this is when the Russians were dominant. I mean, they were the players on the stage. And so in rowing, it's really good if you have smooth water. So the Russians are on the smooth water. We're on the windy, choppy water on the outside, because nobody thought the US was going to do anything. And so we're on the outside lane. We're take off on the race. Halfway through the race, the coxswain says, we're moving on the Russians. And we then plow through the Russians, which is just awesome. And at the end, the Romanians won gold, we won silver, but we were all so happy to topple the mighty Russians. This big Romanian woman picked me up in her arms and picked another US rower up, and we were like, and so that team was magical. And it was magical because we could get into differences and we trusted each other. So then we're going to turn to boat two, the tale of two boats. It was the Olympic year.
We had Lynn as our coxswain. And Lynn, while she's a take charge, I think her dad must have been a bird watcher, because we'd be doing these hard pieces and she'd say, okay, way enough, which is the rowing term to stop. She'd say, look at that blue heron on the buoy. How about that bald eagle flying by? And look at that beautiful sunrise. And we had Bob. Bob was back. And I think we all have our unique relationship with Bob Ernst. And we can agree he had his phrases that he would say. He was famous for cha-cha-cha, or full tilt boogie, or one of my favorites, give me curvature of the earth, which meant be as far in front of your competitors that you can see the curvature of the earth. Now that year, they extended the race, like Yaz says, because they thought we wouldn't die if we raced 2,000 meters like the men, thank goodness. And we started the season like we always did at the San Diego Crew Classic. And we lost. And Bob was so mad. It was unheard of that Washington would lose. Granted, it was to the Canadian national team, but okay, we'll give you that.
It was great. And then knowing that structure, it kind of helps you deal with those things.
I actually took 2 pages of notes and I was engaged the entire time. It's fantastic.
Definitely gave me a different perspective.
I loved this program. How we view sides of issues is interesting piece of management.
Made the Olympic team. Well, I was on track to be the stroke of the boat, the leader of the team, and then I got injured. And it was like, So I couldn't train for 3 months, and then I came back and I was training for the, I had to prove myself all over again, race everybody. I finally made it into the Olympic 8, the top Olympic 8, and I was like, whew. But this boat felt really different. The people in the boat, same caliber of people, really. But there were factions, there were egos, and then a month before the games, there was a decision we could make about whether to use an experimental boat. And so the coach wanted us to have that discussion. We were trying to have that discussion. Nobody said anything. I didn't say anything because who am I to speak up? I'm injured. I'm just lucky I made the boat, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to rock the boat. And so we wound up choosing an experimental boat. Now people were expecting us to medal because we'd gotten the silver medal the year before, so we show up at the games. We make it to the final, but we come in a disappointing 6th. And when we got off the water, that team just scattered. Like, I'm still friends with the first boat because we made those connections. These people, it was just like, phew, because we didn't trust each other. We couldn't get into conflict. We couldn't talk to each other. And it, I believe, directly linked to how well we performed in the Olympic Games. 1 + 1 can equal 11. Like, you can get great results with not even the high caliberous players, the highest caliber, if you're working together. Or 1 + 1, like my Olympic team, can equal -1. Like, you can have the best people in the boat, but if you're not working together, you're not going to produce the results because egos get in the way, or factions, or gossip, or politics, and that happens in the workplace all the time.
CrisMarie wasn't an athlete when she went to a rowing tryout with 110 other women at the University of Washington. Yet, 6 years later, she made the USA Olympic team. She's dynamic, inspiring, and heartfelt.
When we say conflict, we just mean there's passionate people with strong emotions and different opinions, and we all have different ideas. So how do you actually hold for that conflict? Because nobody likes conflict, not even us, and we wrote a book on it. and we called it the beauty of conflict because we feel like beauty has richness in it and diversity when all the colors come together, when all the differences come together. About how many of you are humans in the room? Raise your hand, yeah. And it's like when we can actually sit down across from somebody, we recognize our humanness. When we categorize ourselves, then we're objects. And so as soon as I can actually drop in and be interested and curious into who you are and why is something so important to you, what is going on for you, then the boxes disappear and the humanness. And I love unapologetically Latino. I can't say it as well as you did, but I just love that because I think I can resonate with Vivian. It's taken me this long to start to become unapologetically me. So to actually close the gap between who I hope you think I am and who I really am. And be willing to be who I am and take the impact of what that is, even if you might not like that, and then be interested and curious in the impact. So those would be the two things that we would leave you with, is kind of how vulnerable, how willing are you to be real, and then hang in if somebody has a reaction, because we will all have reactions. Our favorite phrase is, it's not what you do, it's what you do next. So how can I recover and be interested in you as another human being who may have feelings and passion and be upset about what I've said and hang in with you, rather than, okay, I'm never going to talk about that again, and go and leave. Because then we rob each other of the influence we can have on each other.
Very lively and very engaging, and it's one of those speakers that, you really don't have to try to pay attention.
This was a great opportunity to learn about myself.
Very engaging, shared very personal stories.
I enjoyed the strategies.
It gave us some great tools to be able to do that, and practical tips that I can use right away.
It made me feel as though now I can be the superstar.
CrisMarie knows how to connect to any audience of women who want to play big, love deeply, stay healthy, and be wealthy. She also speaks on the magic X factor of teamwork.
We're working with a company now where that's the CEO of this 2,000 person company was that type of leader. And they finally booted him, the board, realized what was going on. And it is a huge impact all the way down the company, and we're having to do a lot of rebuilding. We're starting at that executive team, but also working at the senior leaders and the managers to get them to, some of them think they can behave the way the caustic leader did, and it's like, no, that's not okay, to do that. And this often happens when you have smart people who are passionate and they're working on a goal, maybe different goals, but that's what happens. You run into different opinions, strong emotions, and you get into that right, wrong, my way, your, fighting, that power struggle. And that's what we mean by conflict. When you're actually wanting to accomplish something powerful, but you're fighting over strategies. Haven't many of you have heard of the fundamental attribution error? Okay, one. The idea is, if we don't know someone and we see them do something quote unquote bad, we attribute that to their character. If we do know them, if we get to know their background and who they are, we give them a benefit of the doubt. And that's, so one thing we do on teams is we have people introduce themselves. We just ask them 3 questions: where you grew up, number of kids in your family and where you fell in that birth order, and a unique childhood challenge. Not your inner child, but a unique childhood challenge. And people then just talk about whatever they talk about growing up, and that gives people on the team a context for who's coming to work. Because it's crazy to think how we grew up doesn't influence how we show up. And the more I get to know you, then I'm like, or that's just Al, he's going off. I may actually have to check it out. Like, are you going to hit me because of my background? That sort of thing. But then we can actually have that.
You could say yes or no.
That is a magic question that we're going to repeat, and you should write it down, because when you're in conflict with your spouse, your teammate, whatever, your boss, your peer, to slow down and ask, why is this so important to you? And pause and listen, because why is this so important to you? Really, and if you can be actually interested and curious, you're going to get so much information about how they put the world together. And that's really what you want to know, because that person puts the world together very differently than you do. And so it's a really great bridge builder when you can ask, why is this so important to you?
Super engaging. Good conversation, real talk.
I learned a lot. Great energy. The entire room here, very engaged the whole time. Tons of questions and interaction. It was fantastic.
I enjoyed it.
Really enjoyed it.
We want to see more of that.
To be with such amazing women and be a part of this dynasty. And we're so honored to receive this award as the girls in the boat that we were and the amazing women leaders that we've become. And we want to thank the University of Washington Hall of Fame for giving us this Curvature of the Earth open water finish. Thank you.
For more information about CrisMarie Campbell, go to www.thriveinc.com or call 40